Happy 10th birthday to the secret world of Arrietty. Your Geek History Lesson retrospective on Arrietty is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And I am Jason, a small person with a needle. Inman, welcome to your mind university, because you have stumbled upon the podcast where we take one person, one story, one book, in this instance, one movie, and tell you everything you need to know about it in a little bit less than an hour. But today is a little bit different than a normal episode, because we are doing one of our movie retrospectives, because this is a special occasion. Last year, in the long ago time of 2019, Ashley.
When we could go outside.
When we could go outside and we could just do whatever we wanted to, and we said, no, we're going to stay inside and we're going to watch movies.
I'm going to describe it as more of me bullying you into watching a witch movie with me.
Basically. But we have been making our way through the Studio Ghibli films. Mm-hmm. And today we are going to celebrate, what is the number anniversary of this film?
Happy 10th birthday, Secret World of Arrietty.
Yeah.
It's 10 years old.
Very recent. I think is this the most recent Studio Ghibli film we have covered on the podcast so far? I believe it is.
The most recent one that we have covered, yes.
Yeah, it's the newest one.
We did the very first big one with Kiki's Delivery Service. Yes. And then we did some of the popular ones.
We did Howl's Moving Castle. We did Spirited Away.
And now we're doing Arrietty.
Yeah, so we're continuing the trend, guys. Yeah, so basically, we're going to talk through the movie. We're going to spoil the movie fully. I mean, it came out 10 years ago, so if you haven't seen it, there will be spoilers.
Yeah.
And we have a bunch of fun facts and our thoughts on the movie and all kinds of good stuff. So are we ready to begin, Ashley?
I think so.
All right, great. Well, let's hop into the first section of the podcast, the 10-cent origin.
What is that?
Yes, I was about to tell him.
Good.
That is a section of the podcast, Ashley, where we give them the Cliff Notes version, basically everything they need to know about this movie, in case they go to a Studio Ghibli-themed cocktail party and somebody says, hey, and they're like, huh? Somebody talking to me? And then they look down and they see somebody that's about 2 inches tall. And that person is like, can you tell me about the secret world of Arrietty? And the person's like, yes, I can. And that person gets knocked over by the sound
and
waves.
Their eardrums bleed. Fun fact, Jason and I went to an event that was very much like a cocktail party, a Studio Ghibli themed cocktail party.
Did we?
Remember, we drove all the way to San Francisco for it.
We didn't do good just for that. We've heard other stuff, but yes, that is correct.
It was great. I got food poisoning, not at that event. So in our
it was a store opening. We should make that clear.
It was a lunch party. It was lots of fun. So the 10-cent origin is, of course, Happy 10th Birthday, The Secret Life of Arrietty, which is a 2010 animated fantasy film, originally released on July 17th, 2010, produced by Studio Ghibli, distributed by Toho Worldwide and Disney in the United States, although ironically currently streaming at the time of this recording on HBO Max and not Disney Plus.
It's kind of weird, right?
I'm gonna not swear when I say this, but I think our listeners from last year will remember how deeply annoyed I was that none of these movies were streaming, and then when Disney Plus launched this year, the catalog was not on there.
We should make this very clear. At the time of this recording,
hello, future people,
there are a billion streaming services now. Like Peacock is out there,
God,
HBO Max is out there. ABC, Disney Plus, Access
Paramount.
Plus, Paramount, the Mountain Climber service. Everything is out there right now, and we were lucky enough that HBO Max is cool enough to have a Studio Ghibli tab and has them on there, because last year, I remember it was Howl's Moving Castle was the one that we had a hard time tracking it down. And we had to go to a Best Buy in a bad neighborhood to buy a Blu-ray, and it was insane.
I don't think it was a bad neighborhood. I think it was Sherman Oaks.
I was trying to make the story. Ashley, what?
No, a joke isn't funny if you have to explain it hardly.
Ashley, we're trying to make the stories better. We're trying to make the podcast more exciting. You can't just keep denying me of this stuff.
I'm very good at improv. I just think it's funny that we had to watch this on HBO Max and we couldn't watch it on Disney Plus.
Yes.
It is directed by Hiromasa Yonebayashi. Now, if I could do the sound of a record scratch and then be Ron Howard and be like, but I thought this was a Studio Ghibli film directed by Hayao Miyazaki. Well, thank you. No sell all of my jokes, please. I would like to tell you, friends, that Hayao Miyazaki wrote the screenplay and did what the credits call planning.
Yep.
on this movie. Now, I am not.
I'm going to bet that he framed the walls of this house.
Sure.
Is that correct?
I'm going to say yes.
And he measured all the electrical sockets?
He built the tiny house.
Wasn't much of a tiny house. We're going to talk about that.
A little tiny box. I don't work in animation. Planning could be a thing that happens in animation. It could also be a bad translation from the Japanese. If anyone wants to illuminate us on this, I am here for it. But Hiromasa is Hayao Miyazaki's longtime protege. So this was kind of like when Peter Jackson let Christian Rivers start to direct some stuff on The Hobbit. This is a passing of the torch within the safety of sort of the pre-existing Studio Ghibli setup. The music is by Cecile Corbel. We don't usually shout out the music in these movies, but Jason had a very strong emotional reaction right out the gate to the music, so I wanted to name check Cecile.
Music in this movie, right from the beginning, and I know we should maybe say this for 101, but I will say this, I thought it was astounding.
Yeah.
We'll just say that.
The original production budget was the equivalent of $23 million. Jason, you want to guess what the box office was?
What was the production budget again? I'm sorry?
$23 million.
I'm going to say 40.
$146 million.
Holy cow, they made their money on this one,
didn't they? They did really, really well.
All right.
And the screenplay was adapted from a novel written in 1952 by Mary Norton called The Borrowers. And I will talk about that a little bit more in my Meet Cute. The screenplay was adapted by Hayao Miyazaki and Keiko Niwa. And it is about a family of tiny people who live secretly in the walls and the floors of a typical household, borrowing items from humans to survive. Now, I do want to cap this off by saying, and we've said this before on our Studio Ghibli retrospectives, Jason and I, for the ease of analysis, for the ease of production, for the ease of note-taking, watched the English dub. And in this case, we watched the English American dub. More on that in a little bit. So we will be referring to the voice actors and performances from that cast and the character names from that cast.
It's just hard to take notes if you have to read the subtitles.
Yes. Exactly. And we are not coming down on the subs or dub side of it. You do whatever works best for you, but just for the sake of the episode moving forward, we are working off the American voice cast.
Yep.
Thank you. And that is your 10-cent origin of the secret world of Arrietty. So why don't we move right into our Meet Cute?
Well, actually, I'm going to say typically the Meet Cute is the section of the podcast where we tell people where we first met or cuted this particular subject matter. But this is my first time ever seeing this movie, literally before we recorded this podcast. So is there much point to doing the Meet Cute? Have you seen this movie before tonight?
No, this was the first time I ever watched it, but it's a part that we do for every podcast. Sure. I also want to say that
guys, the Meet Cute for this Secret World of Arrietty is literally 2 hours ago.
We did it for this podcast. We did it for you, friends on the internet. We did it for you, Twitter. But I do want to say that I read Arrietty, not Arrietty. I read The Borrowers when I was 6 years old. I don't think I've thought about The Borrowers since I was 6 years old.
I've read The Borrowers as well.
I freaking loved that book, though. And the single...
I've seen the cartoon as well.
I didn't know there was a cartoon.
There's a cartoon or a live action movie. I've seen it.
I think there might be a live action movie.
I've seen that movie.
But I remember... The thing that I remember about it is that they're exactly like humans, but they have tails. Like fuzzy tails. I kind of wanted tails here. I got to admit. So. So that is our protracted Meet Cute for the Secret World of Arrietty. If you have a better story, share it with us on our social media. We would love to see it.
Maybe we'll retweet it.
Maybe we will.
What's our Twitter again, just in case anybody needs to know?
Is at GHL Podcast. There is a couple different hashtags going around there, so go get in on that fun if you want to hear me talk about Smallville. Now, before we go into the...
I don't understand what that means.
Well, we are still in the deeply in the midst of GHL Smallville, yes.
Oh, okay. Wasn't it hashtag Absolute Justice?
I don't remember.
Oh boy, we got to keep track of that.
I don't remember because I don't want to do it.
All right, cool.
But before we move into the History 101, friends, I want to tell you about another amazing podcast produced by good friend and great supporter of the show, Nicholas Baldwin. Nicholas supported Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio, and so we are going to tell you to go and check out his awesome podcast, In Love with Movies podcast. I subscribed and I am a listener, and Jason and I don't promote things here that we don't believe in, so I can highly recommend going and listening to this. It is produced by a young married couple, not unlike Jason and I, except they live in Chicago, so they have a little bit more snow, Danny and Nick, with occasional guests joining them. It's a monthly podcast talking about love and movies, and they talk a lot about how love and relationships relate to the movies they love and why. You can get it on Apple Apple, Spotify, Anchor, or at inlovewithmovies.com. If you love movies or love or both, I guarantee you will love this podcast. I love it. That is In Love with Movies, produced by the outstanding Nicholas Baldwin. Please go check it out. Subscribe, just like you're subscribed to Geek History Lesson. And thank you to Nicholas for his support of GHL and of Jupiter Jet and the Forgotten Radio.
Yeah, In Love with Movies. What a great name for a podcast.
I know, what a cute name, huh? It's a great show.
Yeah,
so
it is.
Let's dive right into...
We've been guests of that show, right? No? Right?
Oh boy, don't ask me that when I don't have a Google answer for you.
Listen, my friends, I will just say, like, I don't mean this to sound as arrogant as it's going to sound, but we've been guests on a lot of podcasts, and I thought we were guests on this podcast. Maybe I'm wrong. But you know what? In Love with Movies podcast, how about we're future guests? Reach out to us.
I don't think we've been... Nick, I'm so sorry if we have and we suck. Anyway, send me a message.
Nick, it's late at night and we forget things.
Let's get this. It's like 11 o'clock at night, friends.
Yes, it is.
Speaking of numbers that have one in them, let's talk about the History 101 podcast, shall we?
Well, I mean, this is not the History 101 podcast.
The History 101 section. Sorry.
Of the podcast. Full fact right now, everybody, again, we mentioned it earlier, there will be spoilers for The Secret World of Arrietty, so buckle up. That's the...
That's red alert.
That's red alert. But that's also the spoiler alert. So buckle up and get ready if you have not watched this movie before. But we're going to talk about this movie. We're going to go through this movie basically in order, thoughts that we liked, opinions. Again, the opinions are all our own. Nobody is right. Nobody is wrong. Let's have some fun with this.
I'm going to say if you hate the sound effects, you can direct your criticisms to @JLAwesomest, who facilitated our getting this new sound.
Don't throw him down the river.
Love you,
Easy.
Jeremy.
Easy.
I want to start
Very
out...
like stabbing everybody in the back tonight. What's
right
going on
in the
here?
back. I'm going to murder everybody with my tiny needle, so you will bleed out slowly. I want to start out with a couple fun facts. One of them is funny, probably only to me, and the other one I think will be fun to everyone. Fun fact number one, funny maybe only to Ashley. A lot of parents group don't like this movie because they don't think it conforms to good morals because there are tiny people in it, and I think that's hysterical.
That makes no sense to me. This is such an innocent movie.
But it's such
This is like the perfect movie to watch with your kids.
because there's goofy parents in it, but they're kind-hearted.
It is so innocent. It is so tame.
Nobody even kisses in it. There is more romance in Spirited Away. There is more danger and violence in Howl's Moving Castle.
The Secret
than
World
in
of
this.
Arrietty makes The Lion King look like porn. I'm just going to say that out there right now.
Look like a snuff film, really.
Look, there is a full-on lion lovemaking scene in The Lion King. There is
You're
nothing.
right.
There is
to an Elton John song.
There is nothing like that in this movie. It is so tame, so innocent. Like, you could watch this with a 3-year-old. I think people that think that, I'm sorry, and if anybody out there listening, you think that, I just think you're plumb crazy.
I just think I'm.
This is such a tame movie.
This is not me coming against anyone's beliefs, and I'm not criticizing what anybody chooses to show their children. I just thought that was so insane that this is the one. Another fun fact, which is actually fun, is like I mentioned, there are 2 English language dubs of this movie. There is the British version and there is the American version. And in the British version, Tom Holland, aka Spider-Man, does the voice of Sho. In the American version, we changed his name to Sean because apparently Americans can't comprehend that someone might be named Sho. And in the English version, Sinestro Mark Strong is the voice of Pod, who is Arrietty's dad. In the American version, Pod is voiced by Lego Batman and a person Jason shot an episode with, Will Arnett.
Good friend of mine, Will Arnett.
Yes, close personal friend, good improviser.
Should we share
Will
that?
Arnett.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Yeah, make a note. I'll share that video of you. That's a very funny interview from your DC days.
Mm-hmm.
And Homily, who is Arrietty's mother, is voiced by Will Arnett's wife at the time, Amy Poehler. Yes. So there's some stunt casting going on both sides. But like I said, moving forward, strictly going to be the American voice cast references. So this movie starts in the classic way of many a Miyazaki movie. A kid is getting driven to a new place they don't really want to go, where they're definitely going to wind up on a magic adventure in the middle of the woods. And I love that within the first 5 minutes, we meet a chunky cat and an evil crow, and they fight it out. And I was like, I'm going to love this movie.
So I want to talk about... We talked about that a little bit in the 10-cent origin, but I want to talk about the music because I do think that Fred is kind of the first character you meet in this movie besides the trees. And
besides the trees, interesting.
well, there's so many trees in Miyazaki movies, but I think the music is so beautiful. I think it has like a tone of the Pixar movie Brave. It sounds like that.
Yes, it's very Celtic, a lot of violins.
I want to try. I think I found it.
Okay. Arrietty's theme?
I want to try. I don't know if it's a theme, but I think I found some tracks on Spotify, and I want to see if we can play a little bit of them.
Let's do it.
I want the listeners to hear this. Hold on. Let's see. I don't know if this is... It kind of sounds like it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Very soft, very
Brave-esque.
easy, I thought it was very beautiful. It was, like I said, very much a character in this movie that I felt transfixed by this soundtrack. I'd be honest with you, I thought the Howl's Moving Castle soundtrack was pretty strong, but I think this one is very strong.
Favorite one so far, maybe?
I think so.
Yeah. Then we meet the little boy who we're going to be calling Sean, because that's what he's called in our dub. Sean has a heart problem, and so they send him away to, I guess, the house his mom grew up in, or the boarding house his mom used to live in.
It's the house his mom grew up in.
With a creepy frog-looking housekeeper voiced by the iconic and amazing Carol Burnett, who makes a real meal out of this part. In this dub, she's called Hara. In the Japanese version, she's called Haru. So that he can sort of convalesce before he's going to have a heart surgery. When we first met him, I definitely got big Secret Garden vibes, like Colin.
I could see that.
But if you were familiar with the Secret Garden, Colin is a real whiny piece of crap, and Sean is a real weirdly distant man-child instead.
Yeah, let's talk about this right at the
because
gate.
they trick you into thinking that Sean is going to be your protagonist, despite the title of the movie, and he's very much not.
Well, let's talk about this because we have some problems with the English dub,
the American dub,
performance of Sean, because Sean takes a lot of lines that sound super creepy. He says all of his lines like, Arrietty, come over here. And there's many times where I was like, run, Arrietty, run!
Yeah, which is weird because I think Christian Bale's performance as Howl in Howl's Moving Castle is super creepy, but Jason made the observation that in Howl's Moving Castle, our protagonists are adults.
Yes. They're both adults.
Sophie's a little bit infantilized, but they're definitely adults, whereas here, I don't know if we're ever told Sean's age, but Arrietty...
It seems like 10.
Arrietty's 14.
Yeah, it seems like Sean's like 10-ish.
So he's got to be 14 at the oldest, and if he has a heart condition, then maybe he's a bit smaller and weaker.
But it's just like every time he talks to Arrietty, it comes off like very creepy and almost very. I mean, literally, this may be what those groups have the problem with, is because Sean sounds super creepy.
Perhaps. Literally, his first line to her. This is one of the only things I didn't like in the movie. About halfway through, when they finally meet face to face, because the big deal that Arrietty does not want Sean to see her. When they finally meet face to face, he goes, "You're so beautiful.
You're so beautiful."
And my immediate reaction was like, "How like a man? Not oh my God, you're tiny.
It's like he's
not
almost,
oh cool, you have a sword.
It's like he's right on top of the mic. He's ASMRing it, Arrietty." It's so bad.
It's not great.
We should talk about, there is something, and this is something we talk about the dub and non-dub version.
Of course, yeah.
There is something that when you're doing the American dub, you have to match the mouth as close as possible. So it makes Amy Poehler in this movie seem manic, and it makes Will Arnett in this movie seem like a quiet drunk, I want to say. He's like,
Well, there is also this movie, I think, more than some other Japanese properties when they're dubbed, this movie definitely has a lot of those moments where the characters nod and go, or they're sort of grunting, which is something that I would assume, based on how popular it is in media, is just more a part of Japanese animation than it is over in Western animation.
Now, people that have watched the actual Japanese subtitled Secret World of Arrietty, every time Arrietty goes, is it actually?
Yes, it is.
Is it actually the speed racer? Aha!
Oh no! I've watched enough Japanese things. It's still the voice actor going, But there's something I can accept it more when I'm watching the Japanese version than when I'm watching the dubbed version. It's just weird. Amy Poehler does seem very manic in this.
Oh, she seems like she's on a sugar high. And it makes sense because she's always after sugar cubes in this movie.
That's true. And this could have been a note from the voice director. I don't know. But she seems... Amy Poehler often plays these like high-strung characters, but she's like super high-strung.
Well,
here.
I get the impression that the English words would never fit into the timing.
Absolutely not.
So she had to speed up and do like a...
Yeah, it's interesting though because I know English dubs to Japanese are a little bit easier because we have the same vowel sounds. That's why it's easier for like if you're trying to learn an Asian language as an Anglophone to learn Japanese.
Sure.
But it's just different languages. So Arrietty is a borrower, and we learn in the opening couple scenes that she lives in this giant house that Sean is going to be occupying until his surgery, and this is the eve of her first borrowing. Amy Poehler doesn't want her to go, but she is excited to go, and when they walk through the walls, Jason takes an issue with the construction of the house.
Okay, I'm going to point this out here. So I've kind of come up with a conclusion of a reason why I think. So if you notice when Arrietty and her dad are walking throughout the house and they're using all these stairs, there's all these nails everywhere without the house that these borrowers are walking on there. And there's one scene where the nails are like made like stairs and made like a bridge.
Yeah.
And for me, looking at the interior of the house, my first thought was, dear God, what contractor left all these nails just loose and not nailed in? So you have to assume that the borrowers built those.
Yeah.
But it does make you wonder, how the hell did they hammer them in? How did these little 2-inch tall people hammering? Now, again, I'm willing to give it a pass because it's a kid's movie, but that is a thing where I'm like, how did they hammer those in?
I guess I would say that if I was trying to make an in-world argument,
and this is a very big nitpick, by the way.
An in-world case for you, and I'm just throwing Jason under the bus because he mentioned it, but we watched it and I thought it was funny. We do know that there used to be 2 other families who lived in this house.
2 other borrower families, yes.
So there is a chance that maybe all the strong borrower men got together and used like a hammerhead, like, what are those things you bust down castle doors with? A battering ram? And maybe that's how they built it?
I guess. I'm very suspect that.
But I mean, we can do metal work with huge pipes and stuff like that. So we see him.
I'm still pretty.
We see him not welding, but soldering later on. Like they're efficient. They can build.
I still don't think. I still am very suspect that they would have the force to pound on that nail.
Yes, but you do have to just be like, I guess a previous borrower did this.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
And then a lot of the drama of the movie turns around sugar cubes, very appropriate for children, because when Arrietty and
what every child wants,
and her dad
and horse
horse like the drug or like a horse?
No, like actual horses love sugar cubes. You feed horses sugar
I thought
cubes.
You meant kids wanted horse, and I was like, wow.
I mean, some kids do, and those are the weirdos, and you got to watch out for them. They're like Sean. If a kid whispers like, "Hey, do you have any horse?" Then you run.
No, you throw that kid into rehab and then you run. That's what Sean's actually going to rehab. We've cracked the case.
If any kid comes up to you and goes, "Hey, do you have any horse?" You're going to immediately hear this music.
I thought you were going to do Red Alert again. I'm not going to lie.
No.
And their search for the sugar cube leads Arrietty to confronting Sean for the first time. It's sort of
It's a great scene.
Olive branch
great animated scene.
Later on where Sean is trying to befriend Arrietty. It's their goodbye together. It symbolizes her mom and dad's relationship. And I thought this was a really clever on-the-nose way to be like, look, it's sweet. The movie's going to be sweet.
What is exactly? I'm sorry.
Sugar is sweet, right?
Oh.
So like it is literally sweet to the taste.
I thought you were talking about the scene where he sees them as she pulls up the tissue, which I
loved
think
that scene.
That is it has great framing. I know it's not really appropriate to say cinematography for an animated movie.
I think you can,
but
though.
I will say this: it was planned well.
There you go.
I really thought that was like a moment where I was like, "This is beautiful. This is art."
I also noticed several times here, and this is something that I notice a lot with later era Ghibli movies, like past the 90s, because Kiki's is my favorite. I've seen it a lot, and that's all pretty much traditionally animated. You could really see the 3D animation here.
Oh yeah, but
like when they were and I
don't think it
loved
stood out though.
And I love but I mean, if you know what it looks like, you can recognize
you can. I think you can spot 3D animation in any animated movie, to be honest with you, because it just doesn't flow the same way that 2D animation does.
So there's a scene later on in the final act of the movie where Arrietty is riding on Sean's shoulder and the background is blurred because he's moving so fast from her perspective. I thought that was so cool. By the way, there is a cinematographer credited. There's a director of photography on this.
Good job.
Shout out to Atsushi Okui. Sorry, we're going to get the Japanese names wrong. Forgive us.
Or don't.
Or don't. Don't tweet at me.
And just be that way.
I don't care. There's also a ton of little environment things throughout the movie that are basically the Ghibli greatest hits that brought me great joy. The environments, of course, are stunning. Jason and I actually have a Kiki environment piece of art on our new set, so look out for that.
You said that the fireplace in their house is the fire from Howl's Moving Castle. Help me out with that.
Yeah, calcifer. The stove is shaped the same way as the stove, and the colors of the flame. Arrietty uses an umbrella. For an umbrella, she uses a leaf in the same way that in My Neighbor Totoro, there's that very iconic where Totoro is holding it over. Cool. I just think this is cool because this is a later era movie, that there is references to a lot of the stuff that came before this.
Yeah.
There's the crow that we mentioned. There's pretty much a crow or a black bird
in every Studio Ghibli?
Symbology in every Ghibli, and there's usually a cat.
Okay.
And the cat obviously prominent throughout here. Yep. Just as I said cat, intern Brego entered the room. So Brego, can I get your perspective on the cat, Mina, throughout Secret World of Arrietty?
Wow, his perspective.
The insight. The depth.
Yes, I mean, just the profound word choice he uses.
Was it the meow or the mew that really got you on that one?
I mean, more of the inhale. Mm-hmm. Okay, I want to talk about something here.
Yes, let's.
We're gonna jump ahead a little bit here.
Sure.
But I want to talk about, and I want to make sure I'm getting his name right. Is it Spiller?
Yes.
The borrower from the outside world.
Mm-hmm. And you can tell that he's wild because he's the only person of color in the whole movie.
So I want to talk about Spiller because Spiller looks like he has maybe a piece of cat fur or dog fur around him. He has a bow. He has an arrow. His face is painted.
Yeah, very tribal.
Yes. What are they trying to say with Spiller? What do you think? Because to me, my head immediately says, are we trying to talk about something with the Native Americans here? Are we trying to
this is
touch
a Japanese
on this?
movie.
Yes, but it's based on an English story, right? The Borrower is an English story?
Yes, I cannot confirm. Look,
I don't know if Spiller...
I didn't reread the Borrower.
I'm going to say this.
I don't know if Spiller is canon.
I don't know if
book.
Spiller is in the book at all.
All the analyses that I read said that this differs very heavily from the book.
The design of Spiller is very Native American inspired.
It's also very, and this I think is another intentional reference, it's very Princess Mononoke.
Yes, I was going to say that too.
Yeah. I don't quite know what they're trying to tell us with Spiller, because I don't know if they're trying to show us that life outside of the house is going to be harder and scarier, and that's the reason why her parents are afraid of it. I also don't know if it's just as simple as there are borrowers of all potential ethnic groups. Yeah, it might be, it's a kid's movie, so it could be very simple.
Well, I couldn't quite figure it out too, because they decided to make Spiller's speech very stunted.
Yeah.
And
he's definitely an ESL character.
Well, and they also, they kind of write him like Tonto in The Lone Ranger.
Yeah.
Where he's like, me Spiller. Like Bizarro talk. Mm-hmm. And whereas the borrowers that are our main characters are very English.
They're
very articulate. They have a house and they do these things.
They make tea.
And dad is like a mountain climber and he has a flashlight. Whereas this is
they're very sophisticated.
Yeah, and this is almost like caveman borrower.
Although, even though he is a little more, I don't want to use the word savage because that's offensive. Even though he's
uncultured,
a little more wild.
Yes.
there is a bond between him and Arrietty, and they trick you into thinking that it's going to be Arrietty and Sean's love story, and I'm so glad it's not. I'm so glad that obviously they have a bond.
There is no love story, really.
And there's no romance
Which is good.
here. And in the end, ultimately, he lets her go, and I think that is such a powerful lesson to teach children and a young audience.
Yes, we talked about this, and this is jumping ahead a little bit, that when at the end of the movie, if this was a typical and normal Disney movie, that the dollhouse that is inside the main house,
which is what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah, they would like move. The family would like live out in the open with the humans if this was a Disney movie.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that they were like, no, our worlds are separate. It will never work.
And we're preserving what we know. But so when Arrietty meets Spiller, she's really taken with his bow and arrow. He obviously really likes her. And then
he has a cricket leg.
He does have a cricket leg.
Or a grasshopper leg.
I think they say it's a cricket leg. Although there are some really cute. The bugs in this movie are really great sort of side characters. You see a couple grasshoppers.
The first one, when she has her little needle sword that she like on guards at,
the little beetle.
It literally looks like the beetle like holds his hands up like, oh, don't stab me.
It's cute. It's really cute. But then at the end, when Spiller is helping them escape in the tea kettle boat, he gives Arrietty what to me looks like a raspberry. It could honestly be any kind. It could be a boysenberry or whatever. And they have a moment of connection there as well. So it would seem to imply that even though he lives a much simpler and more rugged lifestyle, that like she's into it and that she wants to go on an adventure with him. So it is interesting that he is presented, as being at a different extreme from a societal perspective as them, but he's not scary. I like that they don't other that character.
Oh, no.
Even though he is like visually othered because he's literally a different color than the rest of the cast.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Haru, or Hara, who is the crazy frog lady housekeeper.
Carol Burnett.
She
has a scary face.
Amazing icon. Well, in Ghibli-produced movies, there's only about 6 faces, right? Yes. And this is one of the old people faces. It's been men and women. Mm-hmm. It's not the same old lady face that you see on The Two Witches and Spirited Away. But it's one of the old people faces.
Okay.
She looks like a frog.
Yep.
I definitely thought in the beginning that she was going to be on their side, that she was going to be empathetic, and she's sort of the villain of this movie.
She is the villain of this movie. Mm-hmm. She calls the exterminators. Although I gotta point this out, the borrowers look, you got tiny little walnut brains. And you built...
Not even that. They're 2 inches tall.
You built your house right under the crawl space access? Come on. You talk about...
Do you think they built that house, though, or do you think that's the house they were all born in? Do you think her family... Or is that her grandparents' house or her great-grandparents' house?
You know what? Okay. Then Arrietty's grandparents? Come on. You built that... Look, we're told from the first scene in this movie that Beans...
Yes. I like that.
I like that name too. I have a hard time saying that word. That's why.
Yeah.
I'm Midwestern, everybody. Anyways, that beans are, I'm just going to call them beans. How about that? The beans.
They're magical fruit.
That we should be afraid of the beans. Mm-hmm. So they would know that the beans come down that hole. So why would you build your house? It literally.
Also, their roof is not secured to the house.
It would be like the idea that in Jurassic Park, somebody were like, okay, we're going to camp for the night. We're going to camp right at the gate to the T-Rex cage,
I actually thought there's a sequence where there's a big rainstorm.
Yes.
I actually thought that was going to wash their house away. Because their house just seems to be like a stack of bricks with a piece of wood on top.
And as we see it a couple of times, like their house is very just...
patchwork.
Has a top on top.
Yeah.
Look, if they can pound nails in every wall in that house,
they can super glue the roof.
They can frame that house. They can nail together that damn house.
Did you were you like sad when she was trying to actively murder them and she kidnapped mom and put her in a little jar at the end?
So I was going to talk about this.
Sure.
That the mom in a jar is actually super cruel when you think about it.
Tell
because
me.
Well, the borrowers are human.
But Jason, we do that to bugs and frogs and stuff.
I know, but it's
also not a nice thing to do to frogs and bugs.
The POV,
and stuff.
the point of view of this movie is from Arrietty. So we are meant to symbolize them as the humans and the beans
Yes.
as the monsters.
Yeah, this is very much a monster movie in a lot of ways.
So, yeah, it's very
This is
cruel.
very much a kaiju movie. It's a very cute version. And I
Yeah.
did make a joke when we watched it.
It is a
about
kaiju
I
movie.
can't wait for the Arrietty Godzilla crossover. But especially if people have seen Attack on Titan, it's very that without all the murder.
Yeah, until the lady poked the holes in the glass jar, I actually was like, she's going to
You said that.
She's going to suffocate the mom.
Yeah. I did like that the other old lady was empathetic, though. I can't remember her name. But I also like that she appreciated their need for secrecy.
Yes.
But if you notice in a lot of Ghibli movies, too, and this is something that you pointed out about Howl's Moving Castle, even when there's villains, they're not always villains. There's not a lot of mustache twirling villains. The villains are more concepts or ideas, right? Like
Kind of like the real world.
Well, there's some real villains in the real world.
Well, and also for the idea that, this movie is very fanciful and it's very much like a fairy tale.
Very much so.
And there's a lot of stuff like that. But that point that I just said, where the idea that nobody's pure evil or nobody's pure good is very much like the real world. Everything's a shade of gray.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting, like, real world twist that Miyazaki is throwing into this very much fairy tale storytelling.
So can we talk about how sometimes good guys can be bad guys? Because I think Sean is not a good guy. I think Sean is a bully.
I'm a bully. Make me some more milk.
Because Arrietty...
How is he a bully? I don't see this. He's a soft pansy. Come on.
Arrietty tells him several times, go away, leave us alone. I don't want you to see me. And then he literally grabs her in his giant hand.
Well, he also destroys their house.
Yeah, he does. He
Here's your new
completely
kitchen.
ruins their kitchen. Like, I think he means well, and maybe that's the point.
He's also a kid.
Maybe it's because Sean is a boy and he's a young man. And maybe that is the point, right? And if you're like 6 and you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but you don't know any better. And maybe that's the point. But the whole time I was like, Sean is such a bully. Leave her alone.
I just got a call from the people at the front office, and they said that our 6-year-old listenership just dropped.
I'm gonna say
nothing.
I'm gonna name drop a friend and a listener of us, Mr. Tobias. I won't say your last name. I won't say your whole government name on this public podcast.
Sorry.
I bet he's taking issue with my commentary about the way boys act.
He probably is.
Lovely young man. But yeah, so to me, Sean didn't come across. I usually really like the young male characters in Ghibli movies. Like I love Haku. I will have a crush on him until I pass away. He's such a sweetie boy. But I did not dig Sean.
Why don't you marry them, Ashley? Why don't you do that?
Well, Haku is a river spirit, so I don't think he can be bound by human contract.
Well, until you know for sure, keep your goals.
Hopes high?
Keep your hopes high.
Although, witches can trap him, so maybe I'll just work on my magical powers.
We already solved it. Teamwork, everybody.
Good job. Good talk.
Hashtag river nymph marriage.
What?
I don't know.
River nymph? Is that okay?
Is that what the guy is?
He's a river spirit. He's a spirit of the
hashtag river
Kohaku.
spirit marriage.
Someone draw me and the dragon Haku getting married. Can't wait. I would like to bring up a very specific detail that bothered me throughout this entire movie.
Okay. Very specific. Throughout the entire movie?
Literally from
What is
the
this?
opening 5.
Is it the hair clip?
No, the
Arrietty's
hair clip is genius. By the way, Jason said this when we were watching. He goes, her superhero outfit is outstanding.
Well, what I mean by that is
no,
that
I loved it. I thought it was the perfect description.
when she becomes, and generally this happens in like fairy and
fantasy and sci-fi.
Fantasy,
yeah.
thank you. I couldn't pull fan. I was going to say like the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
In fantasy storytellings, the main character, the protagonist, usually have like a hero outfit, and it usually activates their power.
Yeah,
so if you
Frodo
notice,
has Mithril, and he is the green cloak.
it's the green cloak. So every time like she put on that red dress, it was like,
and the hair clip.
I'm the hero. So it was a great design.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I also like the hair clip because it gives you that. It's a very traditional, beautiful fighting girl silhouette. Like Sailor Moon has the 2 pieces on top of her head, and it gives Arrietty that same silhouette when she's going out into the world. However, the thing that bugged me, every single time somebody said the protagonist's name, they said Arrietty.
Arrietty.
It's a very
Arrietty.
hard T sound.
Arrietty.
I don't know who this note came from.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is an effort to echo the Japanese pronunciation of the name. I did not watch this in the Japanese, but I found that so distracting because if you're speaking it quickly, you would do the thing that lazy Anglos do, and you take the double T into a D sound. So we keep saying Arrietty, or you would make it a glottal, and you would stop.
I'm going to be honest here. I actually think you might have stumbled onto it accidentally. Like, I think that to get all those syllables, the English syllables, into the mouth movements, they had to do that.
But I found it so distracting because it's so unnatural. It's not casual.
The actor that played Sean did it the worst because he was always Arrietty.
I actually noticed it the most on Will Arnett.
Arrietty. Arrietty. Welcome to the Sean ASMR. Hi. Oh, my heart just went.
There's literally a bit where he's running at the end, and I thought he was going to have a heart attack.
Oh God, I need the paddles. Somebody give me the paddles, please. That's my death. Yeah.
You don't have a
No, I don't have a paddle sound effect.
I couldn't think of what they're
I'm
called.
Sorry.
It is the middle of the night.
What? I'm going to put this out to you, Ashley. This has nothing to do with the Secret World of Arrietty, but what the hell would I use the paddle sound effect for?
When you're reviving one of my jokes, probably. Yeah, beep beep beep. You have like a flat line, and then what are those things called?
I could find a flat line if you wanted to.
What
but
are those things called?
Paddles?
No, but what's the machine called that brings you back, that restarts your heart?
God, I don't know. Why are we talking about this? We should talk about
defibrillator. It's a defibrillator. Okay, so
is that close enough?
Sure.
Okay.
Can we talk about what is basically the final chase scene?
Yes.
As Arrietty and her family finally, they spend the whole movie leading up to the decision to leave because once borrowers are seen, they have to move on. That is their sort of cultural rule.
Well, they don't have to, but they decided to.
Well, the rule is that they have to, right?
To fit into the theme of the story of embracing the brand new world, that's why they did that, yes.
So they leave, and then Mina the cat brings Sean chasing after them. So it takes... The other thing about this world, which Jason pointed out, is they move so much faster than those tiny legs can carry them.
Oh yeah, they're walking like miles.
So he chases them through the forest before their goodbye scene, and I thought all of their environmental stuff in the forest was so cool. Something this movie really excels at is making really intelligent choices about what and how they interact with the world around them, even if there's too many nails in the wall. And seeing the creative team have to take on that struggle in a natural environment where they can't just be like, we put a matchstick here to climb up. I thought was so cool. I thought it was one of the coolest sequences in the whole movie.
Well, I'm going to tell you this. I love how much Miyazaki loves trees.
Yeah.
Because
Spirited Away is full of trees.
He makes some beautiful trees. And, and then we end this movie with basically Sean giving us a monologue that he says he survives.
Well, he says he comes back the next year, so.
But he can't find them, but he hears that, like, they just went to somebody else's house.
He said he heard a house down the street that there was, like, stuff going missing.
Yep.
So.
And then he died. Arrietty.
Oh boy, you murdered a child.
He's a creepy little boy. I wanted him dead.
He is really...
He's so creepy.
He's really creepy. All right.
Oh, listeners, now that we have the ability to throw in sound effects in here, buckle up.
Oh, boy. Wildcats for days. Now everyone's going to be in the Wildcats. Jason, unless there is anything else that you would like to bring up from your notes and observations.
No, I mean,
I'd love to just kind of go into final thoughts.
Oh, okay. And the rating?
Yeah.
Let's go there.
Yeah. So give me your final thoughts on The Secret World of Arrietty.
Okay, so I'm going to say this. I had no idea this was based on The Borrowers before we watched it tonight.
Me either.
And I've never been a huge fan of The Borrowers. I think it's cute, but I don't think it's great. And I actually think that this Studio Ghibli movie is quite astounding. I think it is so full of heart. I think all the character motivations are very strong. And I think that as simple as it is a strength. I think that is a strength of the movie that I think some of the other Studio Ghibli movies, including one of my favorites, Howl's Moving Castle, gets too complicated and so bogged down that you get lost in the emotion. You never lose the emotion here. But the downside of that is that it is so simple that there are certain points, and you and I looked at each other during this movie, where it gets real slow. But I will say overall that 75% of the time, that is a strength of this movie. And I think this movie's quite lovely. I actually think that I would put this in, I think, the top half of the Studio Ghibli movies. I quite loved it. I thought the music, I thought the look, and I thought the storytelling were very strong, very clearly defined, and it actually made me love this movie. I would love to show this to a future G-Tail intern cat any day of the week.
Of the 4 Ghibli movies that we've seen, how would you rank them?
Do I have to?
Well, I'm just curious where this would sit in your...
Okay, so...
Or you don't have to give me there's only 4 of them that we've watched.
Okay, so Howl's Moving Castle?
Spirited Away, Kiki's, and Arrietty.
Okay, well, everybody knows, and I've gotten a lot of flack for this, but I was not a huge fan of Spirited Away, and I had seen it before. But
Did you really get flack for that?
I saw a couple people.
Boo! No flack for opinions.
It's fine. Anyways, Howl's is still number 1, just because the concept's amazing. I'd put this as number 2.
Wow.
And I put Spirited Away as 3, and I put Kiki as 4.
Kiki has 4.
Well,
it's your opinion. It's fine.
Look, Kiki. Look, I think Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie. But do I think A New Hope is just as good? Yes, I do. But they took everything they learned and they made Empire. It's like Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul is so much better than Breaking Bad, but it's without Breaking Bad, you don't get to Better Call Saul. So Kiki is great, but they took all the lessons they learned from Kiki and they moved him to Howl's and they moved him to all the other ones. So that's the reason why.
So I want to close out.
Let's hear your rankings.
I want to close out your conclusion by asking you, what's your intern Brago rating?
Yes, out of 4 out of 5 intern Bregos, I'm going to give this a 4.5.
Wow.
I think it is that perfect.
Oh my God, you and those sound effects.
I mean, do you want me to stop? We can stop.
No, it's great.
Let's put this out to the listeners right now. Hashtag sound effects yes. Hashtag sound effects no.
No one's ever going to say no. I will say that I thought this movie was very beautiful.
Yes.
I think Arrietty is a great character who we're going to talk more about on Geek History Lesson Extra.
By the way, I wanted to mention this. I forgot, and I apologize to interrupt you.
Okay.
I think the dad's a great character too.
Pod.
And we didn't talk about the dad well enough, but I think there's a great moment very early on in this movie where he kind of does all the stuff on her first night of borrowing, and he's kind of a badass.
He is a badass.
And I love the moment where she's like, "Wow, Dad!" That's great.
The coolest thing I thought was when he put sticky tack on his hands and feet to climb the
Usually
table.
in kids' movies, it is common to just make fun of the parent, and I liked the idea that not only was the parent competent, but the kid admired the parent.
Nice.
So,
well said.
Back to your thoughts. I'm sorry.
I think this movie is very beautiful. I like Arrietty herself a lot. Like I teased, our Geek History Lesson Extra this week is actually going to be on how to write a young female protagonist.
Yes.
So we're going to dive a lot more into her character specifically there.
Yes, because as you know, we've written 3 graphic novels starring a strong female protagonist. So we're going to
who is an actual child.
And so we're going to give some tips, and we're going to use Arrietty as an example. And I think it's going to be a very fascinating conversation that you can only hear over at patreon.com/Jawiin, Jewin, for supporting the podcast. By the way, guys, we have 4 podcasts a month over there. So if you support
video doc series.
and a video documentary series, I was kind of as one of the documentaries, but lots of podcasts over there. So go check it out and support this podcast.
Yes.
Back to your final thoughts.
I do think this movie gets really boring in the middle. I do think it is not this is going to be a real bougie word to use, but I don't think it's as sophisticated as the other Studio Ghibli movies that we have watched. And I think in some ways that's a great strength, but I really think it lags in the middle, and the movie is like an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
And to me, it felt much longer than it. So I did like it a lot.
Spirited Away, I think, is a solid 2, right?
Yeah, but I love Spirited
Away.
Away.
Counterpoint. Spirited Away lags in the middle as well.
Not in my opinion.
Sure. But I would almost make the argument, and your opinion's not right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would just also make the observation that I think just from us watching this series, I almost think every Studio Ghibli film kind of lags in the second act.
And that might be the difference in plotting in the Japanese style versus what we expect in the American style.
A lot of movies lag in the second act. It's not just Studio Ghibli, but I just wanted to make that observation.
Sure, I think that's a fair observation.
It is a slow movie. You are correct.
In my ranking system, I would say I would put Kiki's Delivery Service first, because it's my favorite.
Yeah, that's nothing wrong with that.
I know it's not objectively the best. It's just my favorite.
Sure.
Then I would put Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, and then I would put Arrietty fourth.
We're exactly opposite, everybody.
I know.
Do you notice this?
And it's not
She's doing this to tempt me.
It's not that I didn't like it. It's just compared to the other three.
She's poking me like I'm a bear in the woods.
I'm going to poke you with my little sword needle. Is that a Game of Thrones reference? It's not.
Let's hope not.
But out of our Brago rating system, I would give it a 4 out of 5 potential Bragos. Curled up like little bugs that she plays catch with. So I enjoyed it. But I guess real boring in the middle. So, shall we move into the recommended viewing / reading?
Yes, the recommended viewing / reading, it's going to be mostly viewing for this one, is if you go to geekhistorylesson.com / recommended reading. If that is too complicated for you, just go to geekhistorylesson.com, click on the little tab in the corner, I'll take you to recommended reading. Every suggestion, every book, every movie we've ever said, hey, you should check this out on the podcast is up there. You can click on it, takes you to Amazon. When you purchase it on Amazon, a little bit comes back to the Mind University. So Ashley, what are you putting up there this week?
So this week we are doing, obviously, The Secret World of Arrietty. It comes highly recommended from both of us. Check it out. I would say with anyone in your life, any age group. This movie's great. It's going to be a great shared experience, and especially if you have a cat, share with your cat. I will probably add The Borrowers to this as well, since it's the source material.
Why not?
And then I will add the other 3 Ghibli movies that we've watched so far on the podcast. So if you want to catch up with everything that we've been doing, everything that we've been chatting about in our animated movie retrospectives, you can get all of that in one place, geekhistorylesson.com / recommended reading. Now let's roll into my favorite part and Jason's dreaded part of the podcast, the teaching tweet.
Yes, this is the section of the podcast that listeners have demanded stay in the show, where Ashley is going to tell you about this movie in about 140 characters or less. That doesn't matter because Twitter now lets you use 280 characters or use twit longer. You can do as many characters as you want, but we're going to choose 140 characters or abouts. And Ashley is going to tell you this tweet that you can see at GHL Podcast on Twitter sometime in the future or sometime in the past if you listen to this several years down the road.
It goes out on the Tuesdays that the episode are released at 3 o'clock Pacific time. Arrietty. A tiny girl in a big world with an emphatic name who makes sweet fun for the entire family. Ding! Not the reaction I was hoping for.
Twitter loves it, man.
Great.
Twitter loves it.
All right, shall we roll right into the honor roll?
Yes, we shall, with its own new sound effect. Yes, the honor roll. That is, if you open the hailing and frequencies and you go over to Apple Podcasts and you leave us a 5-star review, not only does it help this podcast in the search algorithm, but we will read your review on the air. So, listeners, you can say we suck. You can say that Sean is the best character in all of fiction.
If you're going to say we suck, at least give us 5 stars.
And you can do anything you want. We will read it on the air. You can literally write whatever you want. So, Ashley, who is going to join the honor roll for Geek History Lesson this week?
This week we have 2 new additions. The first is Android Paul, who says, feeling inspired. This podcast has been a lifesaver for me. My job is very mundane and the days are long. You 2 have saved me from many mental breakdowns. That is so sweet. Also, I wanted to say that I recently read Super Soldiers and absolutely loved it. I am not big on war-related stories, but Jason enlightened me on how important the military life is on the development of some of my favorite fictional characters and how they can affect real-life service members. You 2 and this podcast have motivated me to start my own podcast, Objectively Subjective, as well. I'm going to say right now, go subscribe to it.
That's a great title. for a
Hearing
podcast.
the fun you two have while doing GHL made me really want to try my hand at it as well. Thank you again from a proud member of the Mind University. Well,
Wow.
Thank you, Android Paul. Thank you for the sweet words about the show.
Go listen to this podcast, everybody.
Yes, objectively subjective. Thank you for the sweet words about super soldiers.
Yeah.
People, if you're looking for something to read, because now a lot of us are not working our mundane day jobs, you can get a signed copy from Jason. Where can we get that?
jasonedmond.com/store.
There you go. So thank you, Android Paul. And joining Android Paul is Soel Al Ghul, who says, long-time listener.
Okay.
Cute name. Is that your real name? I hope so. When it comes to the world of comics and pop culture and everything great for that matter, I've always had one foot in and one foot out. But Geek History Lesson has made it easy to dive in and learn more about characters I love and some I grew to love. Never stop. P.S. Voice impersonations are gold.
Oh, thank you.
I'm assuming that's a compliment only for Doctor Strange. So, Soel Al Ghul and Android Paul, welcome to the Teacher's Lounge. Professor Jason, what's going on in there today?
In the corner of the teacher's lounge, a tiny, 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 tiny teapot left there by Professor Hepburn.
What does Professor Hepburn teach?
Tiny sewing.
Oh, tiny
Yes.
stitching.
Tiny borrower sewing.
Nice.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. So, everyone, go subscribe and download this podcast over at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Overcast, we're there. Stitcher, we're there. iHeartRadio, we're there. Go listen. Give us a 5-star rating if you like. We only read the Apple Podcasts 5-star reviews, but they help everywhere, so go do it. Also, don't forget to support the Patreon over at patreon.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. And you can suggest future lessons and other Studio Ghibli movies on our podcast social media. Ashley, what is that?
You can do that at geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast, specifically for Ghibli reviews. If they have a nice round number anniversary coming up, we love them even more.
Yes, or any of the ones that end in a 1.
Yes.
So if any Studio Ghibli movies came out in 1991, 2001, or 2011,
Hit us up because they'll be good for next year.
chances are strong we'll do them next year.
Yeah.
Don't forget to follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jawiin, Jawiin. Follow Ashley on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. And now we are at #StickAround. That's the part of the podcast where we make sure that you stuck through the plugs because we talk a little bit more. Sometimes they sing, sometimes they don't. Probably we'll have more sound effects. Let's find out, Ashley, what we're talking about.
So I asked you this, and you had such an emphatic response that I want you to reenact it for our listeners here.
What? Okay.
Jason, how would you feel about borrowers living in your house?
I don't remember my response. I'm sorry.
I said, well, because I said I would love to have borrowers in my house, and you said I would hate that. You were so disappointed.
Yeah.
You said they're gonna steal from me.
Well, yeah, one, they're going to steal. They're going to stink up the walls. Look, okay.
With their tiny poops.
With their tiny poops and their tiny bodies.
Oh, Jason.
Look.
That's so dark.
Look.
They're sophisticated.
Look.
They probably, have a funeral service.
If
they probably have burial rights.
Look, if they can carry the body out through the walls, which they may not be able to do,
Oh my
because
God.
getting out to the yard and getting it to bury it might be 50 miles to their little feet. Okay?
Their tiny little
I'm
feet.
not carrying any dead body 50 miles. You're going to get burned at the stove. Okay, here we go.
This was not the episode I expected to have a dark take. Indran Brego crying in the corner.
I'm going to give everybody out there an FYI or a thing. If any of our listeners right now are rural, excuse me, God, I'm terrible with those words.
Rural.
Thank you. I'm going to say hick folk, hillbillies, rednecks, live on a farm anywhere in the world. You know about dead mice in the walls. It is a very common occurrence. Now, modern houses, that is not a thing, but in older farmhouses, this happened in my grandparents' house several times. Their farm was built, the house was built in the early 1900s, and the house is still standing. But, wall panels get a little loose, especially on the outside, and mice and rats can crawl inside, can die inside, And then suddenly you have a room that stinks like death, and you have to figure out where the hell is this dead animal that has crawled inside my wall panels. So to me, that would be The Borrowers times 5,000. I'm sorry you didn't expect that. This is where the episode to go. So here's some nice laughter.
Tiny dead people. What do you think their life expectancy is?
I'm going to guess like a cat.
Like about 20 years, 15, 20 years?
15, 20 years. And
you better live 20 years.
And they age like Kess on Voyager. Because Kess only lived like 9 years.
Well, but they tell us Arrietty's 14.
Yeah.
She looks like she's 14.
But 14 our time or 14 their time?
I mean, I would assume they use the Julian calendar just like us. They're not doing no Gregorian nonsense.
I don't know. I don't think you can trust it. I think they're tiny little hearts just going to give out at any moment.
Like a little teacup poodle, just always on the verge of cardiac arrest.
Yeah, it's just always, it's always going to happen. I mean, I think
Do you think Arrietty's heart's going to give out before Sean's?
Look, I think if you're in your house and there are borrowers around, at any moment you
step on them.
At any moment, Ashley, any moment, any second, you could hear this. Well, that didn't work.
Nothing?
Yeah, that's exactly what you'll hear. It worked out perfectly.
This is why we shouldn't podcast at almost midnight.
It worked out perfectly. That's all I had. The thoughts I have. Who knew that's where we're gonna go?
I didn't.
You're such a city slicker, Ashley.
I am.
As Tex Willerman would say.
Yeah, I am.
All right, time to end the podcast.
Yeah.
I think. How many borrowers do you think listen to our podcast? Can borrowers listen to our podcast?
No, because there's no tiny headphones.
Exactly. Or because if they did, it would be like, hello, and they'd be like,
yeah, we would kill them with our voice. Especially when you're screaming as Doctor Strange.
We didn't bring that up in the podcast, but that is a thing. Like, there are many times where Sean hears her from across the room. That would be impossible. She would sound like this.
Yeah,
He'd barely hear her.
There's a lot of things, kind of like the nails in the walls, and I know I harped on you for that, but you just kind of have to go with it because it's magic and it's a kid's
But they did
movie.
show the clock affecting them. Like, the clock was super loud.
It was very loud, yeah.
Which it would be. But anyways, that's it for this podcast. Thank you so much for listening to Geek History Lesson and learning everything about dead borrowers that you didn't want to know.
Oh, boy.
I am Jason Tiny Funeral Rights Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson and Professor. Oh, boy. Professor Jason, would you please dismiss the class without scarring them?
Hi. My name is Sean. Class is dismissed.